I fully committed to the premise. I've got this pillow is larger than me. I'm on a sofa. I have the most obscene sized mug of tea.
Love that.
Embarrassingly,
Perfect.
I'm not even wearing shoes today.
I was wondering where you were going with that just for a second.
Yeah, we're not panning down.
So, this is our first chat on the comfy seats, and when we're done talking about what James may or may not be wearing, we go on to talk about remote working from home, and the plethora of challenges that seem to go hand in hand with that. We've all pretty much experienced it, or at least had a taster of it over the last few months, and even for those of us who seem to love working from home, there are still some challenges that we have to face and have to address in order to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact on our health and well-being in some way, shape or form. So, I'm Karina. Joining me on the comfy seats today is James Blair. Now, aside from being an all-round lovely chap, you will see what I mean, he's also got a background in biochemistry, and he works for a company called Pavelka Ltd. He's a scientific advisor and a project manager for them. What they do is they look to embed sort of health, wellness, well-being into the culture of organisations. So you can see why I approached him about this particular topic. I suspect they've been very busy over the past few months. So in the first part of the interview, we delve into what the challenges are, first and foremost, but crucially, why it is that so many of us are having trouble transitioning and adapting. If you can get to the why, you can get to the solutions. So this is a really important part of it. Part one, here we go.
I mean, there are loads of different things that I could talk about with you, but an area that I know that you guys at Pavelka are focused on at the moment, and that, you know, you have a particular interest in right now, is this shift towards remote working and what that means for people. What have you observed so far?
Oh, it's for some people, the shift has been nothing less than seismic. The entire shape of people's days, of the way they move, the way they feed themselves, motivate themselves, like the competency and the operational management of their work, all of those things have shifted, and that has brought some incredible benefits, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also brought a number of challenges, which have in some cases negatively impacted people's health and well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, I mean, because I know in my case, the people that I work with, you know, a lot of my clients, it's obviously we focus on the sort of emotional and mental aspect of it. But I know that in the majority of cases, there's a physical challenge involved in this as well. What have you noticed in that area?
You imagine like the working day in quotes. I'm going to try and steer away from terms like normal and stuff like that.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean anyway? Yeah,
it really does. And we're now in a situation where, to speak in like crude evolutionary terms, a lot of people are starting to think, well, it's adapt or die. Like things are changing. I either need to keep with that change or I am going to struggle. And waiting for normal, it may just never happen. But you look back at the old working day, and it was very easy to compartmentalize the way you looked after yourself, your diet, your exercise, whatever mindfulness you had in place, and your work, when suddenly the barriers that were like either time or location based between each of those things have just sort of been slid out of the way. So we're seeing people that perhaps are seeing disruption to their sleep patterns because they're struggling to get a grip on working hours and the management of their electronic devices. Really in a way that seems like a bit of cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. People struggling with their diets, despite now being an environment where you would think I'm in full control of this now. But that control can be a really difficult thing to grasp. For some people, not having a dedicated space for exercise is leading to some physical effects. And then psychologically, there's a whole bag of interesting things to dive into there.
Yeah, true. This is, I mean, it's interesting that, because if we start with looking at those environmental factors, like you say, you would think that being at home, you're in full control. There's no boss telling you how things have to be. No one's controlling your hours so much. You've got perhaps, in a lot of cases, more control over your schedule. You control what goes in the fridge for the most part and all that kind of stuff. So why is it so hard? Why are we finding it hard to make this shift? And why, if in some ways, it's not even just that it's as hard as it was at work, it's harder. Why is that?
It's really interesting. And I'm actually going to call back to one of your previous videos, one of your espresso shot ones on the comfort ruts.
Yeah.
And that like delicate balancing between like survival and comfort. And our psyche, our psychology will struggle and fight with everything it's got to maintain like stasis. You're in a room, you're comfortable right now. Let's just stay here because nothing can go wrong all the while I'm sat here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So even though you're in control of the environment, you might just be limiting yourself to one space of that environment. A number of clients I've spoken to are finding that although there is no like physical oversight around them, because even though there is no one in their ear saying, oh, it's this time of day, have you done this? Have you done this? They are finding that they sit in that safe environment in front of the laptop in the same spot all day, waiting for further instructions. And that leads to this like huge bleed through of their work and related stresses into the rest of their life. They could go and make a meal that they know would be nutritious, that would feed them properly. They could go and perform some mindfulness. They could get out into the garden and do a bit of movement. Or if you're one of the unfortunate people that doesn't have a garden, a spare room, a living room, wherever. But instead, seeking that safety and comfort, we're staying rooted to the screen. And then that is giving back that control that we should in theory have over the space and our routine.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think in a lot of cases, because one of the key issues that is coming up more and more is people almost thinking, well, it was fine when I was at work. If I wasn't working or if I was doing something that appeared to be not work or whatever, someone's going to spot it. And therefore, so as long as I'm sat at my desk, people are aware I'm sat at my desk and I'm working hard. But there was also this aspect of, when you walk down the corridor, you could just, someone could, just pass somebody in the corridor and go, how's this coming along, by the way? Oh, well, yeah, I've just done this. I've emailed so-and-so and this is underway and the cogs are turning and blah, blah. Regular little updates, conversations, bit of validation, which also helps where somebody goes, good job with that, by the way, that was great. And all of that seems to have gone. And I'm finding that an increasing amount of clients are saying now that there's nobody watching, I almost feel like it's a bit like somebody who did use this analogy for me the other day. It's like when you're in a driving test and you're in a driving test, you don't drive like that normally. If you check your mirrors, you just check with your eyes really subtly. But in your test, you go, I'm looking in my mirrors. Exactly. So people are kind of always trying too hard. They don't want to miss anything and they want to be on top of emails even faster than they were before. Because, what will otherwise I'm not proving that I'm doing anything. People are just going to assume that I'm not. So it's almost this, I don't know, what is it? We developed a warped sense of people, I don't know, is it our worry about what people are thinking of us so that they think we're slacking?
Yeah. I mean, like you look at that sort of compulsive behavior, the way our brains are wired, that sort of override of our good senses would come emotionally. So we'll be talking the amygdala, the emotional limbic system in the center of the brain. So we're talking about fear. Essentially, it may not be a case that while you're waiting for an email, you're sweating bullets and like gripping the sides or anything. But we could be talking like low level free floating anxiety, elevated heart rate, slightly increased cortisol. It seems to me, and I haven't done any research on this, but looking at that link between those behaviors and anxiety, that we're looking at like a mutation of presenteeism.
Right.
So that person who would sit at their desk typing away very nicely, when in fact the screen is cat videos on YouTube, they would like be saying hi to people as they walk by, making a big display of moving papers around. It's really easy for us all to forget that we've been hired for the jobs we do. We've been given the positions we have because the people responsible for that have decided we are the right person. And so because we've forgotten that, we're lost in this never-ending cycle of trying to prove we're the right person, showing how hard we're working. And if nobody's watching, we seem trapped in this performative cycle, even though there's no audience anymore.
That was part 1. Coming up in part 2, we talk about how to make sure your hard work is getting noticed, even when you're working from home. Make sure you watch it, and please hit subscribe if you're liking what you're hearing.